Now, a lot of people call The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild a masterpiece, doing everything perfect in every way. However, I wouldn't totally agree. It's an amazing game, but not really the best out there, to be honest. And today I want to take a look at one specific thing from the game: the bosses. Because which ones are the best? Because some were beyond amazing, while others were the worst ever seen in the entire series. So, let's find out. Number 11. Now, almost everyone in the world thinks that one certain boss in this game is so terrible that it should have been scrapped. Now, the sad part about it all is that this is the most important fight in the entire game, and Nintendo totally blew it. I'm of course talking about Dark Beast Ganon, the most boring and useless boss in the whole Zelda franchise. In the fight, he will fire a beam of dark energy from his mouth towards you, and certain parts of Ganondorf's body open up so you can actually attack him. And that's kind of it. You end up taking him down by shooting arrows at it, while riding around on horseback to reach the weak spots. In general, it lacks a lot, and it's basically an archery minigame and nothing more. He isn't even a threat at all, which is the sad part, because they spend so much time building up this evil, but in the end, it's a pushover. Maybe if he really ran around and had some other moves, it could have been fun. A bit like the beast Ganon from Twilight Princess. But in the end, we got a boss that came down to target practice with the bow. Oh, and when it comes to the first stage of this fight, I see it as its own thing, because it's way better. So we'll get back to that. Number 10. Now, most battles in this game are quite serious and also extremely difficult at times depending on the fight. However, some of the encounters you have with important bosses are anything but that. And a good example of this is Master Koga. The fight consists of 3 phases, each of which utilizes his control of magnesis and levitation. First, he conjures up a rock above him to hurl at Link, but striking him from afar will break his focus and cause the rock to fall on him. Second, he levitates above the large pit nearby and conjures up 2 rocks to spin around him, and yet again you have to hit him at the right time. And finally, he conjures up a fortified boulder to attempt to crush you, but you can gain control over it using magnesis and push it back towards Koga, allowing you to win. Now, of course, all of this is meant to be simple and quite comedic, but still, it's a letdown in my eyes. They could have done more with it, but it's just messing around with your wannabe tablet. Which is not really what I wanted from the leader of the evil Yiga, who had been hunting you down. In the end, it's way too simplistic, easy, and very short-lived. Number 9. Alright, now we're really getting into some bosses that are quite special and do their job really well in my opinion. One of these is the Melduga, who has a very interesting strategy and role in the game which I like a lot. They are giant sand monsters that can be found in the Gerudo Desert and resemble fish, lurking below the sand in search of prey. Once they see you, they will come towards you in an attempt to ram into you full force, with bombs being required to beat it. Now, what this basically turns into is some sort of shark chase. They lurk below the sand waves trying to hunt you down, and what you need to do is fish for them using explosives. Quite a simple setup, however it works incredibly well, because on the sand you're doomed, but somewhere safe like on a rock you can start fishing. And when you got a hit, you must run to it to deal as much damage, but still retreat in time so it won't come for you. In my opinion, this works really well and creates a dynamic you wouldn't really expect in a desert, making this a solid world boss. Number 8. Now, there are more world bosses seen throughout Hyrule, and they can be amazing, with the Hinox being a great example of this. They will use swipes and punches and pull up nearby trees in order to toss them at you in order to attack. And you will have to take these gigantic creatures on, one-on-one, using all their weaknesses against them. For example, shooting them in the eye, or using your speed since these creatures are quite slow. There are a ton of ways to take them on. However, they aren't dumb at all, because if you use a certain strategy time and time again, they will try to counter it. For example, blocking your eye with their hand. It's a small touch, but adds so much to the battle itself. When I first fought a Dolwa from Majora's Mask, for example, I wanted him to make up strategies to counter me, but he never really did. But now in Breath of the Wild, we finally get that, with the Hinox being an amazing example of this. Number 7. Now we get to one of the Blights, who are among the main bosses seen in the game, and the one that's the least fun is certainly the water type. For most people, this is the first one to take on, and this was also the case for me. It will attack you by using its spear by either stabbing, throwing it, or swinging it around in a large circle. When it's half health, the water level will rise and 4 platforms will appear. It will teleport around the area, stopping above one of the platforms, and will then summon ice blocks, which proceed to move towards you, dealing damage if you're hit. When I first took it on, I thought it would be really hard, but I was shocked how fast you can take out this thing using just bomb arrows. Even when you don't use those, this one is by far the easiest to beat. So that's the disappointing part. You can easily counter it, and arrows work way too well, which isn't a good thing. Number 6. So are all the Blights like that then? Well, no. Some are still quite easy, but they at least offer some more challenging and interesting tactics. Like Fire Blight Ganon, who has a gigantic plasma blade, can shoot a scatter shot of fire, and later on goes completely Dragon Ball Z Spirit Bomb on you in the second phase. And while this doesn't seem like much, it certainly has more going for itself thanks to these abilities. It's quite good at keeping you at a distance, making the arrows less effective, and is also able to shoot back with its fire. This already makes it a harder target, and we haven't even mentioned the second phase. Here it shields itself and starts to collect firepower to create a gigantic fireball that deals a ton of damage if it hits you. And the way to counter this is a bit odd. You have to throw a bomb and make it suck it up, which I didn't know in the beginning, making it a tough one for me. Although the second phase becomes quite easy as soon as you know the trick. Number 5. Now personally, I think there's one world boss that's certainly the best one out of all of them, the Stone Talus. They're large, deal huge amounts of damage, and are completely made of stone, hidden in plain sight. These creatures are quite slow and try to get you by swiping their stone arms around, throwing rocks at you, and even trying to squish you. To defeat one, you have to climb it and attack the ore deposit on its back. Now there are 2 things that make this boss especially fun to take on. First of all, the surprise effect. You don't always see it coming when a bunch of random rocks turn into a gigantic beast you have to take on. It's something I love a lot and really blew me away when I first saw it in the demo of the game. And the other thing I like about them is the different kinds that are harder to beat and you need to counter with an elemental weapon. The concept is simple but works surprisingly well, making them a joy to take on. Number 4. Now we finally get to the better half of the Calamity Ganon fight, the very first round. And here you take on a hybrid of all the different Blights. Ganon turned into a malice beast having the spear, sword, cannon and more, making him the ultimate version. Most people don't like this because they think it's sort of the same old, you know? But personally, I like it. You need to use all the skills you learned throughout your adventure, which is a good overall build-up. It's just sad the second phase is so bad. Now all of these attacks from the Blights actually work well together, increasing difficulty and giving Ganondorf more versatility. He even becomes arrow-proof at some point, making sure you just can't trick him by spamming a million arrows, making this an improvement over the normal Blights in my opinion. So really, the final battle isn't that bad. He can counter you with all kinds of different abilities, is quite fast, and even uses terrain to counter you. So I can't really complain. Number 3. Now, while Calamity Ganon is fun and all, certain Blights still work a lot better than the hybrid final boss. A good example of this is the wind version, who will fly and teleport around the area, shooting an energy cannon at you while also sending large tornadoes. To fight it, you have to glide up and shoot arrows at it, causing it to fall to the ground, allowing you to attack. Later on, it sends 4 small objects into the air which charge blue energy between each other before shooting at you, and shooting these will disable them. Overall, this is certainly one of the best boss fights seen in the game, using the flight mechanic in an amazing way. You need to be fast, agile and quick on the trigger as well as precise with the bow, which fits perfectly with the Rito and is also fun. Which can't be said about the water in the room the water blight spawns. All of this also makes the fight quite challenging, and since it's made for using a bow, it's not as easy to take shortcuts with it, which is just perfect. Number 2. However, now we get to the best Blight in the entire game, the thunderone, because this creature is great in battle. First of all, it deals electricity damage, and if you get hit, then you will lose your weapon, because of the shock. If this happens, you're already in a panic right away, because it just disarmed you, creating tension. It's armed with some sort of sickle sword, a shield, and its power of electricity. That's it, seeming quite simplistic. However, this boss is fast. Like, really fast. Which makes this fight incredibly fun and a major surprise for almost every player who takes him on. Most people also struggle defeating it, since you're either required to perform a blade flurry, which can be hard to pull off, or at least get out of the way. So all of this is basically a fast-paced sword fight of sorts, with some electricity mixed in. Later on, it even drops metal pillars all over the room and strikes them with electricity, which you need to grab and get close to it so you can shock the Blight. Now, this is my favorite of them by far, combining some amazing mechanics and also being really tough to take down, but it's not the best of the entire game. Number 1. Now we get to the very best one ever seen in this game, the legendary monk Maskasya, the Sheikah monk who's your final challenge in the last divine beast. This boss isn't only the best boss of Breath of the Wild, but also the entire franchise in my opinion. I have even done another video on it before. Now, this monk has so many different attacks, it's insane. And one thing really stands out. Nintendo was just creating cool mechanics and didn't really care if it made sense, since they could do almost anything. For example, teleporting around, being fast like a Yiga, being able to create clones of himself, turning into a giant, being able to shoot freaking guardian lasers, and way more. So as you can imagine, you must use all the tricks in your book to beat this master of combat, who can be extremely difficult to take down, the hardest of any scene in the game. To be honest, I could talk about him for hours, explaining his abilities and how they work well in the game, but I think it's better that you check out the video in the upper right corner to know more, together with the playlist, because this video is over.